So good, so good, so good.
New markdowns up to 70% off are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. And that means thousands of can't-miss deals just in time for summer.
The denim section is unreal.
Why do I rack? All the dresses.
I always find something amazing.
Plus, buy it online and pick it up in-store the same day for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you rack.
This is Cop Talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mamet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Cop Talk, another episode of Cop Talk. My name is Kevin Schroeder, retired NYPD detective, and I'm here with my co-host, retired Captain of Police, NYPD, Ed Mamet. Ed?
Hello, everybody. I'm Ed Mamet, retired police captain. And I'm thrilled to have today's guest, who happens to be a relative of mine with the same name, David Mamet, who is a Hollywood mogul and probably one of the world's greatest playwrights, probably is the world's greatest playwright. He is a screenplay author. He writes books, and he is just a wonderful person who I feel that it was a very big thing to get him on the show today. And part of his work was he wrote The Untouchables, which stimulated many people, as I recall, to join police ranks. And he has done other great movies that are connected to law enforcement. One of his notable films was Homicide, that he did about 20-something years ago. And I helped him somewhat. That was featuring Joe Mantegna and Bill Macy. Interestingly enough, Joe Mantegna plays the part of a Jewish detective named Bobby Gold. And I can relate to that because I'm Jewish and I was a detective. So I think that I had a lot of connection to that film. So anyway, Kevin is going to ask you some questions and then I will.
Well, first of all, hello, David. My name's Kevin, and welcome to Cop Talk.
Yeah, Copper, you can't make me talk, see?
I got you. Well, let's see what we can do. We put you on the lights and we put you in the box, as we say. You'll be talking, believe me. So, David,
yeah, okay.
So David, I'd like to begin with, what made you become interested in writing crime stories and dramas?
Well, crime, I grew up in the city of Chicago where everybody's a criminal. And so, and I had a bunch of run-ins with the police when I was a cab driver. And I worked in some semi-legitimate enterprises over there. And so I love the way the cops talk and I love the way the crooks talk, and they all talk the same language because it's curious in this kind of homogeneous culture that in these two worlds, the cops and the crooks, you get points for being witty. So I thought, well, hell, I know all about that. I'm the class clown. So I think that's what really drew me to the world of the cops.
Oh, okay.
Dave, you live in Santa Monica, as I know, and I've been to your house and I know the location. In 2020, they had riots in Santa Monica, and I believe they took place not too far from where you live. Can you tell us about the riots over there that came about as a result of the George Floyd case?
Yeah, there were riots all throughout the country. And so the whole thing about the riots and the defund the police is, if you read a little bit of history, it's very clear what's happening. It's a Marxist undercurrent, which is going to traditionally seize on any civic unrest and use it as a way to divide the populace. That's what the Nazis did about the Jews. That's what the Turks did about the Armenians. And that's what Black Lives Matter and those guys did about George Floyd and Michael Brown. They said, here's a way to take the society apart, which is what they wanted to do. And when they gave up the police station in Minneapolis, that was, if not the beginning of the end, at least it should have been a wake-up call for any citizen who cares about the United States.
Well, when the riots in Santa Monica took place, I believe they occurred near the mall. Were you able to see what was going on at the time? Were you there?
No, I don't. I think I was maybe out of town at the time. The mall's a little bit farther away, but the cops just stood back, and I know they wanted to go in, but they stood back because there and in Chicago and in New York and in various cities, because the people supposedly in charge said, stand down, we don't want to cause trouble, which is, the idea of doing away with the cops is absurd. because as we used to say in the 60s, when you're in trouble, you don't like the cops, when you're in trouble, call a hippie. So it's both absurd and vicious, which is the grand hailing sign of totalitarian regimes. It's vicious and it's absurd, and they spread terror by saying, "Oh, if you don't go along with the absurdity, I guess you're part of the problem."
Yeah, well, I was worried about you and the family when I heard the riots were in Santa Monica and knowing how close you lived to where they took place. So I'm glad you were out of town.
Yeah, thank you.
David, what are your thoughts on, in California, especially L.A. area, the exodus, with the crime wave, or what's going on actually in this whole country, but especially also besides New York and L.A., with everyone leaving California? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts on that are, it's the fur-lined piss pot out here. It's the world's most beautiful climate, absolutely, and the world's most idiot electorate, absolutely. I've been trying to get my wife out of town for a long time, but she grew up in Edinburgh, Scotland, so when anybody from Edinburgh, Scotland comes to Santa Monica, they say, "I ain't leaving." And it wasn't so much the crime rate, but the government regulation of everything having to do with life, especially with taxes, closing down the schools, and with teaching all this filth in the schools using my tax money. So I think that's why a lot of people are leaving. It's an unhealthy place politically and morally.
And how's the homeless situation out in California?
The problem with the homeless situation in California is it's not the job of, for example, the city of Santa Monica to solve the homeless problem. It's the job of the city of Santa Monica. It's their job to get derelicts off the streets. And the two are two very, very different jobs. So when the city council and the state and the county and the state of California say we need more money for homelessness, that's exactly what they need. They need more money to cause more homelessness because it creates bureaucracy and it lets them get their hand in the till. So I don't know what the answer to the homeless question is here, but I know that the officials are getting paid to get the derelicts off the street, and they aren't doing it.
Okay. Thank you, David. Another question. As we all know, we have a presidential race that will be coming up, gearing up soon. All the candidates, both fields will be very crowded, I'm sure. However, not to really talk politics, but basically, what is your thoughts? What would you like to hear from any candidate who's going to be running in regards to the crime situation in this country, in California as well as New York? What would you like to hear coming out of their mouth? Forget about if they're Republican, Democrat, whoever they are.
I'd like to hear what's coming out of Nikki Haley's mouth. She says we're entitled to be safe. She says, period. She says we can all get along together. We can agree to disagree, but we're entitled to be safe, and it's the job of politicians to fulfill the laws. The first, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's basically it. You can take the Constitution down to that, and that's the job of government. That's the job of law enforcement. And if we aren't prepared to do that, then anyone's going to come over and take over our civilization. Of course they are.
So you like what you hear from Nikki Haley so far?
I love what I hear from Nikki. I'm a Jew, so Nikki Haley went and she talked to the Jews, and she made a speech in the United Nations, which she correctly characterized the United Nations as a farce. And the Jews, who, all of us, except for me, are Democrats, stood up and cheered themselves hoarse for 10 minutes because they were listening to the truth. She's an absolute great American, and she talks nothing but common sense, and God love her.
Yes. No, thank you, David, for that. Ed?
Dave, our show, Cop Talk, is designed as a resource for all law enforcement officers and their families. We've had some very interesting guests. We've had someone on who talked about PTSD among police officers. We've had someone who talked about children with special needs. And we've had some other people did quite a few things in that area. We're considering creating an organization with the objective of reaching out to all law enforcement officers. And I came up with a name called the American Law Enforcement Foundation to address these problems. And specifically, we envision a public education campaign with national advertising with the following goals: to rebuild trust, among law enforcement, to rebuild police morale, and to boost recruitment and retention. Now, given that you are a brilliant communicator and a storyteller, if you were doing the advertising, how would you approach it and how would you tell the story? And another thing I want to point out, this is interesting. You are involved with Hollywood, and I know the political situation with you in Hollywood. But during World War II, there was an organization called the Office of War Information. And if that office was using Hollywood stars to create military training films and also to inform the public about the progress of the war. So using that analogy, would there some way that we could get Hollywood, even though they're mostly liberal, involved in something like this so we can get the message across nationwide?
Yes, there is. I take all of the executives and all the agents, and I lock them in a big room, and I tell them to shut the fuck up.
I don't know if we can put that on the air. We'll have to find a synonym for that word.
Okay.
So
I trust you.
So is that all you have to say about that?
Yeah. You know what? We had a shootout twice outside my house here. Very nice neighborhood. We had shots fired middle of the night. One night I go out there, there's cops all over. My wife wakes up, bop, 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 shots fired. I go out there, and there's like 25 cops out there with the bubblegum lights on, and there'd been a shootout. They chase the guy to the ground. They're exchanging shots right outside, but I thought the guy was in my house, right? And so I go downstairs to see if I can, locate the guy, and I can't find him. I go outside to talk to the cops, and there's the guys, they're all guys in their 20s, women in their 20s out there. They're there to protect my life. They're going to go back into my house and risk their life to protect my life. I mean, Lord have mercy. Anybody who ever had anything to do with the cops, unless they were writing a ticket, has had something of a similar experience. That those guys are putting their tushies on the line. And that's the story that people they used to tell in movies all the time, right? That's what cops were. And I don't know if they tell that story in movies anymore or not, but I would say Hollywood is a complete waste of time.
So if Hollywood is a waste of time, what would you recommend? Can you write a play about it?
Well, I did. Actually, I did. I did a play last year with Billy Macy and Dominic Hoffman, who's a two-character player, and these two cops, and they've just been to a terrible, terrible crime scene. And it was about that. Eddie, what was that kid, that terrible kid on 91st Street who killed a Jewish girl? Michael something or other. Remember him?
Was it Chambers?
Chambers.
Chambers?
Chambers.
Robert Chambers.
In Central Park, right.
Central Park.
It's about these two cops who just come across the girl in the park, and they're sitting getting drunk. They can't stand it. They can't go home because one of their colleagues, who was the first guy on the scene, was 5 days from retirement. He came across the scene. He arrested the kid. He just sits there all night crying. Then he eats the gun. And these two cops are talking about what in the world. How can we live this life where 14 guys did that, last year, 20, whatever. And that was my play, of homage to the cops. And the play was called Nightstick. And what the cops are saying to each other is, for Christ's sake, if you got a nightstick, break his wrist, whap him on the shin. You don't have to shoot him. They take away all of these weapons, and then, they turn the cops into targets. But when people are in trouble, they call a cop. So that's a great thing that you're doing. Let me think about how to get the message out. But it's not through Hollywood, because Hollywood people are stupid. For example, they're all anti-gun, and then they make their living, showing phony baloney shootouts all day, wire to wire. They're lazy, terrified hypocrites.
Well, David, it's amazing about Hollywood. They're against guns. However, all their security are armed personnel.
Of course.
Right.
It's just like they're against using fossil fuels, and they fly in private jets. But they're living in a dream world, right? Because they've been too rich for too long, and the media's in league with the left. That's okay. That's going to change. And what's going to come after it, I don't know. But the question of people, I've been doing this for 50 stupid years, and people constantly say, let's do this and that to change people's minds. Well, there's a perfectly good mechanism for changing people's minds, and it was developed by Samuel Colt. Nothing else works.
Dave, while we're on the Hollywood subject, maybe our listeners would like to know how you transformed from a liberal into a conservative and how it affected your career with the Hollywood people.
Well, I was doing this play on Broadway, and you saw it was called November, and it's about this president coming to grief. And the New York Times landed on everybody, landed on me, blah, blah, blah. And so I did this interview for the Village Voice. And I said, I've been thinking a lot about politics yesterday. And I said, we have to be courteous with each other. I said, for example, I'm not even courteous with myself. I've referred to myself all my life as a brain-dead liberal, which I am. So the Village Voice comes out next Wednesday. The whole front page is Why I Am No Longer a Brain-Dead Liberal by David Mamet. So after that, I was out. Nobody would talk to me. Nobody answered my phone call. All the people I've been associated with and been treating me like, quote, one of them, the New York Times, and NPR and so forth and so forth. All of a sudden, I submit stuff and get a form letter. So I said, okay, I drove my own car. I didn't get off the bus. I'll do something else. So I started doing something else.
Well, I guess trying to use Hollywood as a resource for us is dead on arrival. But if you can come up with something else, we would very much appreciate it.
I will. You know what it's like, Eddie? It's like during various wars, somebody gets the good idea. We're going to drop leaflets from an airplane, right? That'll convince them, right? But it's never worked. So that, to me, is like dropping leaflets from an airplane. It's scattershot. You're not appealing to an audience which is interested. But I would suggest that you go to this thing, you guys, called the Free Press. It's a whole new site. It's by Barry Weiss and Nellie Boyle, two ex-Times reporters who went straight. And it's magnificent. And I would get in touch with them because they will embrace you and they'll have some wonderful ideas because they're appealing to a lot of young people.
What's it called, the Free Press?
The Free Press, yeah. And I'm their resident cartoonist.
That's good. Okay, it'll be all in the family.
Yeah. It's, I'm a bundle of talents. It's like, I'm like bologna. Wherever you cut me, you're going to find the same thing.
And what are you working on now?
I've been working on this. I met this guy who was a member of the Giancana family. And Sam Giancana was his great uncle. And he wrote a script about how they killed Kennedy. So I said, wow, this is great. So I'm working on with that. And I think we wrote the script with him. And I think I'm going to direct that movie this summer.
And while we're at it, people should know that you did Glengarry Glen Ross with an all-female cast, and we're all waiting for that to appear on Broadway.
Yeah, we'll see. But more importantly, I got a book coming out in the fall called Everywhere and Oink Oink, 40 Years in Hollywood by Dave Mamet. Look for it.
Yes, and I remembered when I retired, I asked you, what should I do? And you said, write a book. And I said, what should it be entitled? And you said, 40 Years a Cop.
That's a spectacular title, kidding?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hey, David, how about a documentary on Captain Ed Mamet? What do you think?
Well, I was just reading Countess's book, which is based on Eddie. Eddie, what's the title of the Countess book?
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
It was called Suspects.
Yeah, it's a very good book. It's about a guy who's based on cousin. He dedicates it to Eddie. And then I did that movie Homicide, which is about a New York cop who's a Jewish cop that's very much based on Eddie. But the thing to remember about documentaries is they're all fiction.
Well, that's true.
Very true.
Yeah, it's just, I'm sure it's just like a crime report. It's modern American fiction.
All right,
Hey,
David.
come on now.
Are you still there?
These are the jokes, people, okay?
I think that we've had enough of you, David. You can go back to sleep.
Okay, I'm going to go back to sleep.
David, thank you for your time today. Very interesting. And let me know when you're going to start that documentary on your cousin, Ed Mamet. I'd love to be a part of that.
Okay. It's a great pleasure. And thank you both for your service. Have a good day.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank
Regards
you.
to the
Thank
family.
you for being on Cop Talk. Thank you, David Mamet, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.